there's three main ingredients to be an entrepreneur: passion, an idea, and kind of ignorance. Like literally, if you knew how hard it was, you may not do it.
Or you'd overthink all the small steps that would stop you from even taking the first step.
Yeah, because you're trying to be perfect. You're trying to avoid some of the pitfalls that you hear other people talk about. So you're trying to be perfect. But I would say those are the three key ingredients, an idea, passion, and ignorance. And you just have to be resilient.
Well, Rea Ann, I'm so happy to have you on our podcast today. You and I are new friends for about a year or so. I'll always remember when we first met in your office in New York City, and we got this instant friendship and partnership, and we've collaborated on a very much hit product, our beauty blender, HULKEN, which remains one of our really best sellers. So we both have some things in common. You obviously have a lot of successes under your belt. You've seen the ups and downs of running a business. I'm excited to have you here today because you obviously know my life husband, Johnny, but now you get to meet my work wife, Lee, with whom I've built multiple businesses as well. So this is very special for me. And it's special for me because since starting this podcast, we've realized that a lot of women are reaching out to us specifically around those very first steps on how to start a business. And of course, who's better to talk about this than you, who's done it successfully and with a lot of stories, because we've discussed a lot of those over dinner and drinks. So I'm excited to have you on, and let's dig in.
Well, thank you, Alex. Well, has it only been a year? I feel like I've known you my whole life.
I know, isn't it crazy?
That's so nuts. But thank you for having me. Hi, Lee. I feel like you're a unicorn. I don't know where you actually live in the world. I see you all over the place. So nice to meet you here on podcast air.
Well, I'm really excited to finally meet you because I actually remember when Alex first met you in her New York office. She came back and she was like, I met the founder of Beauty Blender. And it was just, we were so excited because you created a category, just like HULKEN's creating a category, you created one. And I think this is a great kicking off point. Like, I would love to hear how you got started, how you even had the bravery to jump into this unknown, right? Because Beauty Blender really created what the Beauty Blender is, right? And you see lots of different copycats out there, but there's no one that has created a product as extraordinary as that Beauty Blender in that segment.
I'd like to call them my fans, the copycats.
Yes, love it.
Okay, and they are not beauty blenders, Lee.
Exactly.
They are sponges. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get that straight. Beauty Blender is a brand. We are the category creator, the original. And we are different. We are made in America, not in China. And we are not mass produced. We are curated. Every beauty blender that touches your face has been hand shaped by a human being's hand. And I like to say we're couture, not fast fashion.
Love it. So tell me, how did you get started?
So I'm a makeup artist. I mean, by profession, I worked in film and television. I started out a music video, did editorial, commercials, red carpet, anything you can think of, for over 20 years. And I was asked to come in and department head one of the first shows. I think it was the first show. I always say it's the first show because I feel a little shy saying that, but it actually was the first show. It was the first show being shot and broadcast in high definition. And what that meant was that the makeups that were traditionally done for television were a lot heavier than what you needed for high definition, because suddenly in high definition, you see everything. We needed to find a way to, create beautiful natural looks. And the four girls on this TV show, Girlfriends, were beautiful. We didn't want them to look like they were wearing a ton of makeup. And that's generally in television and in filmmaking. You have to have the kind of experience that allows you to understand that every time you touch up, you're applying more makeup on the face. So eventually, by the end of the day, someone looks like they have a shit ton of makeup on their face because they do. So you have to be able to be balancing it out, leveling it out, and keeping it fresh and looking good. And it was harder to do in high def. And literally, that's how Beauty Blender was born. I had taken an ongoing education class that my union gives with other experienced makeup artists, and we shared secrets, kind of like a little bit like how TikTok or Instagram is now, where everybody shares everybody's secrets. Well, we used to actually really have trade secrets, and only makeup artists would share with each other. And it was, now everybody shares everything. Everybody's a makeup artist, which, hey, it's great. But it didn't used to be that way. So we would do these ongoing classes. And this one makeup artist was talking about how she was wetting sponges for these super, super tight close-ups on Demi Moore in G.I. Jane. It's an old movie. I don't know if you remember, but like she went to, it was a crazy movie. Anyway, and it gave me an idea. And I went back and tried it on set, and it started to really work. So me and my team in our trailer in the morning, we would cut sponges and take the edges off of them and use them wet and airbrush and try to do all these things to just make everything look really natural.
Wow, that's so interesting. So it started really because of this new technology that forced you into thinking, how can I change the game for makeup artists?
Absolutely.
But how do you take an idea, or how did you even take this idea and actually say, I want to build a company around it? Because that's right. Like, you probably thought, like, I don't know how to build a company. Like, what were those first steps you took? How did you have the courage to even do it? Walk us, like, really go back to those early days and tell us what were those initial steps?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say like, oh, I planned this all out, ladies. I had a master plan and it was great. But literally, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Like, I have no business experience. I mean, I do now, 20 years later, but at the time, it was kind of ignorance is bliss. I just was passionate. I knew that I was not the only makeup artist that was going to have the same challenge, because everything was turning into digital. Everything was going to be high def. So, literally, I was a very, very popular and highly paid makeup artist. And I had hit a ceiling. Like, I was trying to find ways to kind of like, clone myself. I would have a couple sets running at one time in LA, just trying to make more money because I was a single mom. And I wanted to send my kid to private school. And if you know anything about living on the West Coast or the East Coast, private schools are like, I don't even know how to compare them in terms of, luxury expense. I mean, you might as well just go charter an airplane and fly yourself around, because that's about how much it costs. Anyway, so, I just never seemed to have enough money. So I wanted to find a way to kind of have a little bit of like passive income, which I thought was passive. There was nothing passive about being an entrepreneur. Let's just say that right now. That's why I say ignorance is bliss. Like, I really, I was so stupid. Anyway, I'd like to say there was a master plan.
But this is all so highly relatable. So many women find themselves in this position. First of all, no experience. They've never been a founder before. Lee and I went through this as well. We were young, and like you said, ignorance is bliss. And in many ways, when you don't know, it's almost easier because you don't see all these blockers ahead of you. But so single mom, running your first business, walk us through the emotions that went with taking that leap. How did you feel? Did you feel confident from day one? Did you obviously had doubts? Like, walk us through that.
There's a stew, okay? When you cook a stew or a soup or something, right? There's three main ingredients, I think, that need to have happen to be an entrepreneur. And you have to have passion, okay? You have to have a good idea, all right? An idea that you think other people will understand, and hopefully it's innovative. But innovation is an interesting word, so we can talk about that too. So, passion, an idea, and kind of ignorance. Like, literally, if you knew how hard it was, you may not do it.
Or you'd overthink all the small steps that would stop you from even taking the first step.
Yeah, because you're trying to be perfect. You're trying to be perfect, right? You're trying to avoid some of the pitfalls that you hear other people talk about. So you're trying to be perfect. But I would say those are the three key ingredients, an idea, passion, and ignorance. And you just have to be resilient, And I think the thing that really prepared me in some ways for being an entrepreneur, or an unexpected entrepreneur, if you will, is that as a freelance makeup artist, and that's what, everybody in that works in the entertainment industry is an independent contractor. The days of being, contracted by a studio or like black and white film, right? People don't do that anymore. So you're an independent contractor. So literally every time you wrap a job, you're unemployed. So you can't, you grow a really thick skin, and you learn not to be frazzled or shook by unemployment, right? Or the need to hustle and get out there and promote yourself to get the next best job. And that's really, I think, that mindset that I developed as a makeup artist prepared me a little bit for, the three ingredients of entrepreneurship and the ups and downs that go with it.
Did you start selling direct, like when you started selling it, did you start selling directly to makeup artists? Did you go retail? Like what were those steps of you and having to think about how to actually make it into a business from a passion project in a sense that you were using to actually selling it?
So, I mean, I'm truly an accidental entrepreneur. What I thought was going to happen was, this is really stupid. I thought I could maybe bake some sponges this is how dumb I was. Okay. I didn't know how to make sponge material. Right. But in these classes we would, because there's special effects classes, people make their own appliances, there's ways, for you to make one or two pieces of things, not 10,000 pieces of things, right? So in the beginning, I thought, well, how am I going to get this made? What am I going to do? So my first step was not, I am going to be a global consumer brand. I'm going to sell all over the place. I didn't even think that. I didn't even know that could happen. Honestly, I was creating Beauty Blender for other makeup artists that were going to have the same challenge I had. So my first customer was not Sephora or Ulta or any of the global, huge beauty chains. It was really the pro stores that would sell me product for my sets. Like when you go work on Warner Brothers or Universal or any of the stages, a lot of times you go to one seller that goes and collects all the things you want, and then they deliver at one time to you. So those were the people the pro stores that I first sold Beauty Blender to. I had a great relationship with them because I was a super busy makeup artist, which means I was a really good customer. And they knew that, I was respected within my craft. And when I created Beauty Blender, they were super intrigued. They were like, what the fuck is this thing? What are you making here? And then when I explained it, they were like, oh, okay, we're going to help you. So it was the pro stores.
Did you talk to those stores before you even built the product and did the packaging? Did you have their buy-in a sense before you went down the road of actually producing even a small batch?
No, because, there was another thing that I was trying to do before Beauty Blender. I had created these really cool brush rolls, something we should talk about, Alex.
Right.
Yeah. And I just was so busy working, I didn't have the time to figure out how to get it done. So I had kind of gone to them already. They knew I had this really cool idea. They were interested in it, but then it didn't really pan out, right? So I didn't want to do that again. So I waited until I was further down the road to really, share with them what I was doing. Plus, I was also, in the process of understanding how to protect my idea. And after that brush roll idea, I started seeing a bunch of other people making them because I was using it on my setup. So people would look at mine and go, oh, that's really cool. And, pretty soon I started seeing other people with similar stuff. So I was kind of like, okay, I gotta button it up until I'm ready to go.
But how did you even know where to do the packaging? Like, how did you actually produce? You had this idea. You said you were going to bake the sponge. You thought you were going to bake the sponges at first. How did you actually take this idea and be like,
That is
I'm
such a
going to go to the
dumb thing. I can't
manufacturer?
believe I admitted that. That is so stupid, but it's so true. Okay, so I was passionate. So when I become passionate about something, I learn everything about it. So I became pretty resourceful. And this was, girls, this was 20 years ago. So there was no Google. There was no internet. I mean, it was literally the yellow pages, word of mouth. You know, that's why trade secrets used to be trade secrets because there was no way for the secret to escape. Now everything is everything. So, but back then, the pro stores, I have to say that, I always give credit to like, there's a store in LA called Friends and another one called Nigel's that opened up a little bit later. But, Friends was a family owned business and I knew those people really well, like I said. And whenever I would have a question about something, no question, hands down, they would be a great source of referencing for me. Where do you get this? Because they were also kind of making some of their own store branded products. So they had to have a little bit of information. And I realized that at that time, because it's a totally different business, I realized that there were like trade shows, right, for packaging. There were trade shows for, different industries. And it was the most foreign thing to me, but I would, buy myself a ticket and go drive my car to wherever that local, like where, it comes to your town, right? Your city. And I would just walk around and meet people and get cards and numbers and call them and just, figured it out.
So much hustle. I love it.
But I ended up meeting, I did end up meeting one woman. Her name is Catherine Bailey, who I give all credit to for really getting Beauty Blender made because when I met her, she was like the ultimate source of information. She had been in the beauty implements business for over 30 years. And she really, when she discovered what I was trying to make, she was like, oh my God, I really believe in this. I'm going to help you. So she was a big source of information for me. And she eventually came and worked for me. She was my president for a couple of years. She's retired now. She still works with us, but yeah. So, the generosity of other people, the generosity and sharing of information is very important.
I love that. And that's something that Lee and I always say as well when we speak to aspiring founders, how much it's important to share. It's important to talk to people and expose your idea. To get feedback, but also there's a lot of generosity out there. People love connecting, people love helping.
Not to be a Debbie Downer on that, Alex. I believe that's true, but I think it's also important to recognize who you share with.
Absolutely. I think you should identify the people that can actually be valuable.
Or appreciative.
And appreciative, yeah. It sounds from what you're saying that you obviously had some influence within your community that allowed you to reach and your first buyers, essentially. You had a ton of hustle that allowed you to put the idea into motion. And it also sounds like there's a huge community that powered that motivation and those first steps in business. How much do you attribute that to the community of makeup artists? And we've seen that at HULKEN too, right? We have these niches of professionals, the makeup artists being a huge one, as you know. It's a lot of the founders that we talk to depend on community. And how do you think that affected how you grew Beauty Blender?
I mean, what stood true then stands true now. So the pro community was my first community. And, it's interesting because my pro community is very discerning. Like they don't buy into bullshit just for the hell of it. And I didn't know, like, honestly, were they going to think this was a gimmick, like a little pink egg, or were they going to actually understand this very kind of high-tech idea of sustainability, high definition, repeat use, like regarding this tool the same as you regard your brushes, from the masters to now. We look at the paintbrush as the tool that creates, the masterpieces. Well, it's the same for makeup and beauty. The tools allow you to perfect your idea, right? And apply the products in a way that you translate from your brain and your eye to a person's face, right? Were people going to look at Beauty Blender and think like, what does this thing do? Like, what is this thing? And it's bright pink, like what? So it was really like a risk in some ways for me to put it out there to my fellow artists, but it didn't happen overnight. So I told you I was working like 2 or 3 sets a week. I would have different sets going on at the same time and be bouncing around. So I would have them on different sets and different people would be using them and other makeup artists. Pretty soon it was like, that word of mouth and so on and so on and so on. Like a couple people would be like, this is great. Then someone else would be like, oh, I get it. And even if they weren't shooting in high def, it like sped up makeup application. It was blended easily. Like there were so many positive attributes to this little design that they valued. They became my first community and they're still my community. They're the ones that validate everything I make.
How did you know when it was like taking off, that this little idea you had that your initial community seemed to really love? How did you know that, wow, like this goes beyond that community and this can actually be a very big business? When did you get that really, that pull that made you realize like, I'm totally onto something? And how did you even think about pricing it and speaking to an audience outside of your original community of makeup artists?
I'm not sure I even realize that yet, to be honest with you. Like when I hear you say that, and listen, I get a lot of, praise and compliments and all those things. But when you work with celebrities, as long as I've worked with celebrities, and you wear black and you sit in the back and you're sitting in the trailer and you see the agents come in, you see the publicists come in, you see the producers come in, you see fans come in, you see everybody blowing them up all the time, right? You're the best, you're the greatest, you're the this, I am the biggest fucking cynic. Like, I think everybody's lying to me. And I'm like, oh, I'm like 3 seconds away from dying right now. Like, if I'm getting this much praise, some shit's going down right now. Like, it's hard to believe. But I mean, that's honestly, in full transparency, that's the insecurity in me. But it's because I've seen so much shit in these rooms that when people say things to me, I kind of like want to believe them, but I know there's a trap in believing the hype.
What's the trap?
Don't believe the hype, because pretty soon, you think you're the best thing since sliced bread, and pretty soon there's 25,000 loaves around you, looking better, or like, you just gotta work, like.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah.
And that's also a trait of being an entrepreneur, right? The discomfort of the journey.
You have to enjoy the moments. There's moments that, I think I'm really lucky. I no doubt I work hard, but I think there's a certain grace that happens sometimes in life. And I think, I don't know as much about you, but Alex, I know that we're lucky to have Leah, I don't know if you have kids or anything, but
yeah,
I'm just saying, like, we're lucky to have distraction, okay? Because you can become obsessive about your business. And so your life has to be layered with, at least this is my belief. I'm not telling you anything has to be, but in my belief system, Rea Ann's belief system is your life has to be layered with distractions. And they're healthy distractions, because if all you do is think about your business all the time, you tend to live in a vacuum. So you have family, you have kids, you have hobbies. Alex, I know you love to travel. I love your life with your family. You guys are so great and you have friends and you socialize. Like you have to do all those things. Even if you don't feel like it, you've got to push yourself out there and do that. Even when you feel crappy and shitty and you had a hard week, you've got to get out and switch your brain out.
100%. And talk to me a little bit about this, about your personal life as your career was taking out. Obviously, you were very established before Beauty Blender, right? But as this new business took over your life, how did it impact, if at all, your personal life? How did you navigate, family, friendships? I feel like there's no straight answer. I'm still figuring that out.
No,
so I'm hoping I'll get some wisdom from you.
I just laugh because I just told you how you have to have layers to your life and you have to have distractions, right? But this is also the irony of that is that my life, the way I know that is that I had no chill. Like I just hustled. And my husband, Alex Rory, we come from production. So our relationship began on a set. And we worked with the same producers and directors. So a lot of times we were stuck together for 12, 14, 16 hours a day on set away from our kids.
Just how career and ambition and growth impacted your family life and your relationships in the broader sense.
So, your life is lopsided when your kids have to come visit you on set. Yeah, or when you have to fly them in to your location, so it was just kind of trying to find those moments and those balances. And it's crazy because my daughter now is 35 and she has a daughter and I see her also. She's a busy entrepreneur also. She works with me part-time at Beauty Blender, but she has this whole other world going on. But I see her trying to find balance as well. And she's doing a great job. But what I love most about it is that it makes my heart full to know that she understands now what I was doing, and that's all you can do is you can hope that you're providing enough balance that you're showing your kids that you're passionate and you have something you love that you're doing, and you're passionate and love them too. And you're trying to blend your worlds together,
Speaking of balance or lack of balance, when did you let go of your makeup career to go into Beauty Blender? Like, when did you even know to say, like, I can't balance both of these worlds. I need to take that leap.
So that's a great question. So about 8 years into Beauty Blender, I finally stopped doing makeup for a while. I'm still doing makeup. Regina Hall just took me out of retirement. I just worked with her last week. She's got 3 movies coming out. I'm going to be doing some press with her, but I have to keep working to stay creative. I really realize that now.
I love this. Honestly, if our listeners are listening, like, this to me is so powerful, because I think sometimes people who have ideas think they have to drop what they're doing right then and there and go all in. But you're basically telling me that you were running Beauty Blender while doing your initial makeup artist career at the same time for 8 years. And even now, as the CEO and founder of Beauty Blender, you're still being a makeup artist because that's where you get your creativity to create new projects. I think that's incredible and inspiring.
Well, it's a lesson learned though, Lee, because let me tell you, in the first 8 years of Beauty Blender, I would show up on set and I have this friend, his name is Sam Fine. He's like a real famous makeup artist. He's, wonderful, lovely guy. And we've been friends for years, but he works with Queen Latifah and a bunch of people. And like, when I would show up on set and he'd be with Queen Latifah and I'd be with whoever, he'd be like, bitch, what are you doing here? Go home. Why are you here? Why are you here? What are you doing? And I'm like, Sam, I still work. I still have to work, because that's the other thing too. Like, the thing about entrepreneurship, and especially I still own Beauty Blender 100% right now. Like, I finance everything. I don't have an investor. I pay everything. It's expensive. And, the bigger your business gets, and not being a business person, I'm not always doing things in the most efficient way. There's a lot of things I learn on, through experience, everything I learned through experience. So it's funny. So I worked for the first 8 years, and then, there was a period of time that I stopped working, and that was when I had to be founder, be that person, doing business, right? And learning about the business. But then I realized that like it became very, I don't want to say it became depressing. You know how I just said you need layers in your life to kind of appreciate all the different dimensions of your life, being a woman, being an entrepreneur, being a mother, being a partner, being a friend, being a daughter, like all those things. There became a flatness in my life where things just became flat. Things like it was just monotony to a way, in a way. I mean, things were exciting. Beauty Blender always, like, I'm so fortunate. Beauty Blender has had this amazing life of its own. Like literally, I think of this little egg-shaped sponge as a personality. Like it has its own thing going on. And I'm just here to kind of manage it, like kind of like babies, you bring them into the world, but then they have their own personalities, and all you can do is try to guide them. Like that's kind of how I feel about Beauty Blender in a way. But there became like this kind of flatness, like maybe like the 7-year itch. You know how they say like in a marriage, like 7 years into your marriage, there's this saying where you get kind of like bored and everything's kind of flat. I experienced that for several years, and I was trying to figure out, and it was during the real growth periods of the business too, where I really felt like I needed to pay attention to the business because it was growing. And suddenly you're hiring people, you don't know what the hell they're doing half the time. Like some of the time you know what they're doing, other time you don't know what they're, you got to watch this, you got to watch that, you got to, like I was like watching like everything, right? And
So you just needed to be there full time.
I just needed to be there. And then, I started realizing from a product development perspective, I needed to get my hands dirty again. I needed to get my hands in the goop. I needed to work and be inspired. It's not that I needed to work because I needed an income. I needed innovation. I needed ideas. I needed to know what the kids are doing, like, because things have changed, like this whole digital world that I started with, like, really changed everything. And makeup artistry is so different now,
So different. What a journey. It's really incredible. Do you feel like there's anything you've had to sacrifice to go all in?
Yeah, a little bit. Peace. I try to find peace wherever I can. And what I mean by peace is, again, I mentioned grace. I believe in God. I'm a God-fearing, whatever it is you believe in, like that higher thing. I believe in it. And I think that without the drive and the passion that I had, I wouldn't get here. I wouldn't be here really, or maybe I would. And that's the question. Like, did I really need to work as hard as I worked? Maybe I did, because I think I'm a bit of a pioneer in some ways. I mean, a category creator for sure, but also being a Latina, being a woman, like there were so many kind of things I had to go hard to try to make, to try to like prove myself. And I sometimes wonder, like, did I miss out on certain things that maybe I would have? But then at the end of the day, like I told you, like my kids are grown now. They're thriving. They're healthy. They love me. They understand my journey. My journey's given them strength. So when I think about those things, I have to remind myself of that. But, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what I should have done or what I could have done. I just don't, because I think it's a rabbit hole. It's, I don't go there too often.
Has your journey been fun?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been amazing. Are you kidding?
What's one of the highlights?
Alex, it's all a highlight. It's all a highlight. My life is like, and I don't like, obviously there's ups and downs, there's hardships, there's frustration, there's anxiety, there's all the things that come with being an entrepreneur. But when you pull back and you look at it, it's a fucking highlight reel. Are you kidding? Like, I worked with the most amazing celebrities. I worked at a time in entertainment that was transitional and transformative. I created a category. Then I was celebrated with that. And I continue to still have it. And everything is like,
Yes.
I'm waiting for the shoe to fall. Like, what's getting
It won't.
what's happening? I mean, listen, and relationships are challenging. I have had many challenges in the business. It's not to say that I haven't, but I try as much as I can to keep it in perspective, like, you're lucky you have this challenge, because if you didn't have this challenge, what would be your challenge?
What's your advice to others with ideas that are trying to take that idea to market? We have a friend that's working on essentially a skincare line, right? It's a family business, and she's pushing it and she's pushing it. And my question to you is, when I'm sure small skincare companies come to you, or whoever, what is your advice that you give them? People that are trying to make their idea into something. How do you know if it's the idea to go after? How do you know when to give up? What do you do?
I wish there was I get this question a lot. I wish that there was just one answer, that I could just be clever enough to, just kind of summarize, what the best thing for that answer to be. But the truth of the matter is, whoever is coming to you with that question, you have to look at what they're trying to do. What is their challenge? What, industry are they trying to enter? How common is their product? What is their point of difference? How can they exercise that point of difference in a way that's loud enough to get attention in really crowded rooms, and that's where, again, I feel like lightning bolt from God, Beauty Blender, like, there was nothing like it. So it was she would walk in the room and she's the cutest girl in the room. Like, literally, Beauty Blender would come in the room and they'd be like, what's that? Like, who's she? What's, like, literally being the cutest girl in the room. Like, I hate that analogy, but when something's just striking, like, Beauty Blender would enter a conversation or a room because it was a category creator. No one had ever seen something like that. It was very much a situation that was easy to exercise that point of difference, because there was nothing like that. What I'm struggling with now, what I'm trying to learn, is how do you create that point of difference when you're no longer the only one in the room? But it's not a mystery parable at all. I mean, we see in your industry, in my industry, there are many products that are exactly the same. How do you market them, and how do you make a point of difference? And how do you translate value?
Yeah. And that it's a good segue to the next question, actually. You mentioned competition, dupes. They're not Beauty Blender. The quality is just not there. There's a lot of differentiation. The first time you saw these dupes, and I'm going through that with HULKEN right now, we see the dupes popping up, and part of me, I hear your voice telling me it's a sign of success. It means you're doing well. But part of me is also, angry. What did you feel the first time you saw these dupes, and how do you deal with it today?
I was like, the audacity. How dare, when you know nothing about why I created this or what it's supposed to work, you just literally building a business on my back. That's what I felt. What I showed was something else. Was it right? I don't know. Like I told you, Alex, we had this conversation a little while ago too. And, when it happens, you just got to breathe, and you have to your job just became a little different. So now it's like, okay, so what is my point of difference? So for Beauty Blender, again, I lightning bolt from God, right? I said this, like, when you create a category, you my job, I think I told you this, is to let people know that we are the category creator. We are number one in this category. These others would not exist if it wasn't for us. Same with you, and that's the mantra, that's the lesson. That's the thing that's the first thing you say. So it's like, okay, I'm the category creator. I'm the first and I'm the best and I'm the original. But then, you see on Amazon a bag of 5 Pawpaw blenders for $5. And, so then my job becomes like to educate the consumer about several things. The difference between my product and their product is material. I have exclusive material. I have my product's made in a medical facility. Again, couture, not fast fashion. Mine is designed to not be in landfills. Yours creates carbon footprints. Yours, you have to find those points of differences to story tell. And something that I'm actually learning right now, it's really crazy about having a brand for 20 years, is that my first customer now has kids. And those kids are my customers or the Pawpaw customer, right? And they think everything is a beauty blender. So they think they're supporting me in all of their goodness and their sweet little hearts. They think they are supporting Beauty Blender, but it's not a beauty blender. Beauty Blender is a brand. It's not a product.
Yeah, I love that it's a brand and it's not a product.
Yeah. So it's education. So I'm basically right now, I have a campaign out right now called Don't Be Duped. And it talks about all of this because Alex, I spent years turning the other cheek and just, preaching about how we're the best and why we're the best. But now, no, you know what? You guys have just become a little too rude. So I'm coming at you.
You're owning it and you're putting it at the forefront of all of your marketing channels. It's really refreshing.
I have nothing to lose. I've got nothing to lose.
I know you said that one of the reasons you decided to expand, right, what you were working on is because you wanted to send your daughter to private school. And when I believe in manifesting, when you talk about that higher power, again, I don't know what that higher power is, but I do believe when you set an intention and you put passion and hustle behind it, things can happen. And I know you said you initially started with this one idea, this roller of some sort, and then you went into the beauty blender.
Brush roll, brush roll.
Yeah, okay, a brush roll.
Brushes, yeah.
So how long into that journey did it take you to kind of get that intention of being able to send your child to private school? And I'd just be curious to know, was that a aha moment of, wow, I did it?
Yeah, it was definitely, it was an aha moment. There was so much that happened in between. I'm just thinking about that. Because, girls, I've not really talked about this too much. So I don't have like a lot of references to really talk about the journey at that point. But at that point, I had been separated and no longer with my daughter's father. And he was a professional NFL football player. He made millions of dollars a year. And he just literally walked away and said, fuck you, I'm not giving you anything. So for me, it was like I needed, my kid was already in private school and he was helping me pay for it. And then he just decided he wasn't. So it was like, how do I not disrupt her life? It wasn't like, oh, one day I want to put her in private school. It was like, how do I keep her there? So, I think they kind of overlap. So when the brush roll thing happened, I realized that, like I told you, I didn't have the bandwidth because when you're a makeup artist and you're working on high-end celebrities, your focus is really there. You can't be like, well, maybe you can now because everybody's on their freaking phones all the time. But like you couldn't be sitting, not paying attention. That would be noticed. My agent would hear about it. Like, oh, she was distracted. She's not really paying attention to my client. And she's, so you would really have to be there. And, and people wanted to have my position. So in order to keep my job, I had to, work a 360 situation. So I realized that the brush roll thing just wasn't going to happen. And it happened at a particular time when I was super busy, so I couldn't really focus on it. But when Beauty Blender came along, there was something so different about it. And it was at a different time. It was a couple years, maybe 2-3 years down the road, that I was in a different place, and I was in a different place mentally. I had evolved. I had become, I guess I wasn't desperate enough to have something happen with the brush roll. I was the hot kid makeup artist at the time. I was living that life, and that was the part of the choices at that time between making a product and being a hot makeup artist. I chose being a hot makeup artist because that's where the money was definitely coming in. A couple years down the line, though, I just remember when I got that job on the show with the high definition and the broadcast and all that stuff, I was like, this is a bigger opportunity than a brush roll, because people like me, other makeup artists around the world, are all going to be soon no longer filming film, but everything on it was video cameras. We weren't even, we weren't taping on our phones at that point. So I just figured it was a different opportunity, and I could feel it. I don't know if Alex, you're such an entrepreneur. You have so many different businesses. You've been so successful in your young life. Don't you feel it sometimes? You can just feel when something is clicking.
You feel it. And we've had businesses that didn't work. And you also feel that. And it's when you do have a business that works, that pull is so strong, it's almost you can't look away. You have to go in that direction.
But if you don't have that, if you don't know what that pull feels like, you might not know, right? We've fallen into the trap thinking we have the pull, but it's not. Only once you have that pull where you're like, oh, wow, I was so off the mark.
Oh my God. And thank you so much for defining that for me, because that was the difference between the brush roll and the Beauty Blender. I knew I had to go with the makeup artistry and not the brush roll. I had to keep working. But when Beauty Blender came along, there was there's something there.
How amazing. Well, Rea Ann, we're almost at time. Before we wrap up, okay, I would love for you to tell us, if you could whisper in your ear as a young entrepreneur, one piece of advice, the day before you launched Beauty Blender, the day before you took that leap, what would that be?
Get ready. Get ready. You have no idea what's about to happen. The good, the bad, the dirty, the ugly, all of it. Just get ready. Be resilient.
Be resilient. Absolutely.
That's a great ending.
We know that too.
I love
it. You know what? I forget, who was it that told me this? It was definitely somebody older than me. I'm so old now, but somebody older than me at the time, be like a candle and let that wax just roll off your back. Just let it roll off. Don't take anything personally. Just be smart and just get to the next place.
Be smart, but a little bit stupid, so you keep on going, right?
Yes, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly.
Oh my God. I can never be as naive as I was then. And it was so great.
Exactly. You can't go back to that. That's for sure. You know too much. You're so successful now. But thank you, Rea Ann. Thank you for sharing that with them.
Thank you so much.
And our listeners will learn so much.